So we had a few requests from you guys after our reaction video to the kind of launch trailer for the new Fable game, looking for a bit of speculation, and we kind of have been having a chat about this for a long time, even before this, about what we want from a new Fable game, where we think it should be set, who we think it should be about, etc, etc. But we also wanted to do a video and combine this into a chat of what we actually expect it to really be. And there might be some cynical moments about what we think it actually is going to end up being, so bear with us. We're not just grouches, but we're trying to make sure we keep our expectations low so we can't be disappointed so much, and then we'll talk about what we do really want to see so we can also get excited as well. So we might start with what we actually expect it to be. What do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. I guess we can just jump straight in and sort of talk about what we expect to see, but with the fact in mind that both of us sort of have tempered expectations, and we don't want to let our expectations completely get wild and out of control this early in the potential development for this game. So yeah, I guess let's jump straight into it and just get into some stuff that we want to see.
Yeah. So, well, look, what I'll say is I might just start off with what I think it's probably going to be, which is it's hard to tell. But for me, I think it looks like it's a total reset. It almost, to me so far, looks like, I know it's got the guild sword, but it looks like it could be almost like an alternate timeline.
Yeah.
Again, I know this is based on such a very small thing, but it's Bowerstone set, obviously after, or at least just between Fable Lost Chapters and Fable 2. And we know the guild fell during that time, so it could be the fall of the guild, or it could just be this alternate timeline. And something tells me I think they're going to try and do a whole new characters and reset completely, because it's a new developer as well.
Yeah, and I guess they're definitely going to want to do something to sort of distinguish themselves from the sort of initial trilogy, especially because there are some negative connotations involved in the later entries to that trilogy, and with Lionhead in general, I think it's pretty safe for them to just kind of try to distance themselves from it and take the IP in a new direction. But I think everybody who saw the trailer is super appreciative that it is, I guess, or it seems to be respecting the original. We did have the sword with the hero's seal symbol on it, so at least if it is in a completely alternate universe, there will be some tie-ins of some sort, or similarities that are enough to tell us that it is still Fable and not just a game with the Fable name on it. Yeah, agreed. I think one thing that I guess I'm not sure if I want, but I'm pretty sure we will get is I would not be surprised at all if it's open world. Just because I think RPGs these days are sort of their hand has kind of been forced, I guess. The consumers just can't get enough of open world content, and I think developers almost feel like they need to have open world tacked onto their RPG as like it's almost synonymous now, isn't it? You can't have an RPG without open world RPG anymore.
Well, it's almost like you can't have almost any game without that. Like even like a Red Dead Redemption 2, for example, which is an absolutely great game, was set as open world and it's got and we've talked about that in videos about that game, so we won't go too much into that. But it was good, but it was also it didn't really need to be truly open world, if you ask me. But that is what it is. There are some exceptions out there. Obviously, the original Fable games. Well, by the original ones, I mean the very original one, which was done, like hub after hub, and the Deus Ex games, for example, which are definitely hub cities, which it's just interesting seeing the differences between them, which is where, like in Deus Ex, for example, you've got all this extra life, into a smaller area, but it's completely alive. Whereas obviously in some games, and we won't name any names, but this big open world, but actually you know, nothing to do, no life, no immersion still.
Yeah, I feel like even a God of War 4 approach would be perfectly fine for me if it's just sort of, it just seems like the direct evolution to the hub-to-hub system that some of the older games had, where it's, it is still hub-to-hub, but there's like, it's connected without a loading screen, you kind of just walk between them, but it's not like, it's not true open world. You can't just walk over a mountain to get there. You still have to follow the path that they have set for you. So, encounters that they want to put in there and specific enemies they want to put in there can be tailored to what point your character is at and what point you're at in the story, so that nothing feels sequence broken, I guess, because I think that was probably the biggest criticism of Red Dead 2 and most Rockstar games and a lot of open world games is sort of sequence breaking. You can start the game as like a peasant, but you can rush over to an area that has like a dragon and slay it, and suddenly you're a god. And I feel like, maybe Fable would benefit more from maybe not having that, but I definitely think it'll be open world. I think they're going to be hard pressed to sell it unless they say it is.
I think so, and I think that'll drag it kicking and screaming into a AAA game territory again as well these days. I also think that it's probably going to be another one of those games where there's quite a bit to do, but I think they're going to simplify some of the choices and decision making again, because I think they were, especially with Fable 2 and Fable 3. Fable 2 the most, I guess, is that they tried to have, both of them, scrap that, both Fable 2 and Fable 3 tried to have all these choices, but realistic and make it more in depth and everything, but actually a lot of the choices were none choices at all, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to like the more simplified Fable and Fable Lost Chapters choices, where it's kind of just good choice, bad choice almost, or evil choice, I should say.
To be honest, I've come to love that simplicity in the original Fable game. I feel like I don't have a problem with there being more grey choices. I think, The Witcher comes to mind as a really good example of a game where, there's not really any ultimate good choice or ultimate bad choice. It really does just come down to what you feel like would be the better outcome. But I don't know if that is what is best for Fable, because Fable, given the name and given the history of the series, it's all about, it's a story of the hero, and it's these or a villain, I guess. So it's sort of a fabled version of events. So you're not looking at it in the moment. You're sort of looking at the choices in hindsight, I guess, because it's as written in like a children's storybook almost. So the choice is going to be he does the ultimate good and saves everybody, or he does the ultimate evil and kills everybody. There isn't going to be like he chose to do the grey choice and saved as many as he could without whatever. It's just not going to happen. I don't think it works for Fable. So I hope it stays black and white as well.
Alright, well, I think that's some of the stuff that we think it's going to be and a bit of our hope. So let's get straight into what kind of storyline, what kind of era, what kind of characters, and this is not us, we have taken them down to improve on them, but part of one of our channels, for any of you that are watching, is also we're quite creative, both of us. We don't want to criticize or comment without ever giving what we would do, so this isn't us writing, if you like, our version of what we want that completely to be in the next Fable game. This is just things that we think that it should be and what we would like to see. It's not a list video either, by the way, and if you agree with it, guys, let us know. We really want to hear from you as well. This is a conversation, and I guess I'll start with the first thing that I want, and what I want is to not see Teresa. And what I mean by that is it would be really good if you could find maybe some stuff within game that have some reveals of stuff more about Teresa, but I don't want to actually have the character Teresa to be a in-game character, whether it's a companion or playable or in any way. I think that she's been into all the games so far. Time for not having Teresa. What do you reckon?
Yeah, agreed. I think I may have said it on the channel in the past, but I definitely said it to you. I think I'm not the massivest fan of Dark Souls storytelling, and I think everyone here knows sort of what that means, where it's sort of just they show you little glimpses, but they never really give you a full, a full grasp of what's going on. I kind of hope that Fable takes a little bit out of that, in regards to some of the old characters and old events from the, I guess, original trilogy is what we'll have to call it now.
OT.
The OT. If there's gonna be anything to do with Teresa in the game, I hope it's Dark Souls style, where it's just a reference to a character that could be her, but it's never said, yeah, this is Teresa and this is what she did, or here she is as a character. I don't want that. I agree with you. I think it should just be, maybe a children's storybook that makes reference to like a blind seeress that did something or another, and it's just a reference to her at best, but not a complete confirmation that this isn't her continuation.
Yeah, I mean, my idea, I think that I have, and getting on to my next bit, so it'll tie in, is I want to see more Jack of Blades, and I actually would like to see a return of Jack of Blades in some way. It doesn't have to be as the primary antagonist, although I wouldn't be against that either. I really like Jack. I think Jack's a criminally underexplored antagonist. I think he's one of gaming's greatest ever villains, to be honest. And there could be a reference made if he's the main antagonist in some kind of conversation or whatever, where Jack maybe mentions something about Teresa having been in the void, or having gone back to the void, or something like that kind of gives us a bit more to Teresa's backstory, but whilst not giving her an appearance. So that's where it ties in. And as I said, I would love to see Jack of Blades again, in some form or other. Maybe he's in a different form, and maybe it's a bit like Voldemort from Harry Potter, where he can't get back into his full body yet, but he's still working on it, and he somehow still brings down the guild. If we're in that time frame, I don't know, but I think Jack of Blades being involved somehow would be really cool. What do you think on that?
Agreed. I think one of my favorite things about Fable, even before I got properly into the lore, was Jack of Blades as a character, but also, the other two masks that he has around his waist, the Knight and the Queen of Blades masks. I would love to maybe not necessarily have them feature in the game, but definitely just more lore and backstory for Jack and just the Void in general. Especially if, as you say, they do end up being the story of how the guild fell. I think it would be really, really cool to have more than just a little cameo in this case, as the villain, to sort of bring the series back into the mainstream. Who better to be the villain than Jack himself, the one who sort of started it all in the first place?
Yeah, and I think Fable ultimately should always be about Jack. And I think that's where they started to go wrong, if you ask me, with the void and the corruption, and particularly in Fable 3. And then obviously it went on into the journey as well. I think that was a bit of a downfall. I think Jack should be the main villain. By hook or by crook, it's about Jack. And I think Fable 2 was okay, because you don't need to, but I think Fable 3, it should have somehow linked back to Jack, or at least in the journey, and it didn't. And I think that's where maybe they need to bring him back. And that, or maybe this is an outsider thing, a bit of an out there thing. Maybe there's a twist where you're the protagonist and you're the hero of wherever, the hero of not Wholeglade, whatever, and turns out that you're actually Jack of Blades without really knowing it, and you're the bigger evil is the corruptor, and you're actually it's like an antagonist versus an antagonist, where you're actually like the what do they call it, the anti-hero, the hero not by choice. And you're Jack of Blades, where you're this kind of evil being, but you don't want to share Albion with another evil being, so you're trying to, and it turns out that actually the reason why Jack of Blades wanted to rule Albion all along was because he knew about the corruptor. So it turns out that maybe Jack of Blades all along was actually secretly a good guy.
Yeah, cool. Well, I was actually thinking this myself a little bit before as well, and I think it wouldn't be too difficult for them to pull off, because there was already a point in time where Jack was considered a hero. he was leading the arena. He was the hero before Thunder to sort of bring the arena back into the light, I guess. So he was, the people of Albion saw him as a hero. He has a hero doll. He wasn't this villain yet, because he wasn't obviously showing his villainous side to the whole world.
Well, they also
he must have done something.
Yeah, that's Well, they also covered some of this. I mean, in Fable 3 with King Logan.
Yeah.
He sort of turns out that he was doing all this because he knew that the corruption was coming, and so maybe just spill that over into the Jack debate, and that the whole part of Fable 1 was that he was trying to get the Sword of Aeons because he knew that it was the only sword that could possibly go head to head with, and he didn't know about, say, Avo's Tear at that point, so he thought it was the only way to go head to head with the Corruptor, and so you can factor that in. I think I would like to see something in that. It doesn't have to resolve that story, by the way. I mean, I think that if it was left open enough for future installments, I don't think anyone would be upset about that. But as long as it's done in a fairly satisfying way, that would be good. But yeah, I think that's what I would like. Something to do with Jackal Blades. In terms of other things, we were talking about open world earlier. I think I would like open world in the sense that I would like a relative amount of freedom to roam Albion, and however within reason. Like, I don't want like in, again, some games where there's just like a massive open-ended coded area which just regens the same rock and tree next to each other 3 times before you get to the next settlement. Like, I want it to be, if it has to be a bit smaller but sculpted that way, I think that would be great. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I wouldn't be unhappy with open world, but I do think that Fable benefits more heavily than some other series might from a bit more of a sculpted touch, a little bit more focus on the individual areas and the specific, not dungeons, but you know what I mean, like the, for example, a hop cave or something like that. Deserves a bit more attention to detail than maybe just any other RPG that can just sort of be slapped together. I think Fable definitely is a much more interconnected game. So if the map was smaller but more sculpted, then I would be pretty pleased with that, I think, rather than just a big open world with sort of copy-pasted locations and enemies.
Yeah. And I think something we're probably guaranteed, but I definitely like as well, is Fable has generally always done well at getting good voice talent. And I hope that this one will be no exception. It would be great to hear some of our favourite voices, and sometimes be like, oh, I recognise that voice, or oh, whose voice is that? Because there was a couple of voices that actually snuck in even to the very first Fable game that you don't even think about. Like, I'm pretty sure David Walliams, as on Little Britain, David Walliams, I'm fairly certain that he did like the shops are now closing like voice in Fable. I could be wrong on that one, but someone maybe confirm if they can for me. But no, it took me ages to work out that I'm pretty sure that was him.
I mean, if it's not, someone did a damn good impression.
It's got that campness to it, the lift as well. I'm pretty damn sure it's him. But yeah, so that's what I'd like to see. I think I would like to have no guns in Fable. I think it's back to a bit more medieval era, because that's what it's supposed to be. It's Fable, it's Fable. It's when we believed in fairy tales and magic and that, and piss off guns, and again, I'm not anti-steampunk, but Fable's not steampunk for me, if you ask me, right? So I think
Peak Fable definitely wasn't, and I definitely think I think that is the direction they're going. We sort of talked about this before, but in terms of time frame, I definitely think they're going back to pre-guns, or if not fully pre-guns, definitely pre-widespread use of guns. So there may be like the odd flintlock or something like that, but there will never be, I don't think there's going to be full-on like blunderbusses and cannons and steampunk contraptions like there was by the end of Fable.
I don't want any of that. I don't want
any of that either. I really do.
Or anything. I really
do want to go back to bows, crossbows at best, swords, magic. That's it.
Magic,
that's what I love.
exactly.
Just flesh out the magic system instead. Give us a much wider variety of sort of magic-related skills that we can spec into, and maybe flesh out the bow and arrow / crossbow system as well, because I know Fable sort of started doing the whole hero of skill, will, and strength thing, and obviously in Fable and Fable the Lost Chapters, obviously strength and magic I think were sort of I guess more powerful. Bows were good, but you could enhance your bow with magic, so you were still kind of using magic, not just reliant on bows, you know what I mean? So I feel like maybe giving a few more skills into the skill side of things instead of the guns being part of skill would definitely balance it out, so that it's a bit more even between strength, skill, and will, rather than more will and strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, on all of this is give it back to the feeling of the first one, in that it's I actually think the first one had more choice, even in its maybe more limited options, even though that sounds like a misnomer, than the others. You didn't have hundreds and hundreds of outfits, but you didn't need it. You didn't have hundreds and hundreds of haircuts, but you didn't need it. You had enough. Just do that. Like that was enough. People have liked that enough. You add one or two more onto those, but don't go too crazy for that, because it's almost like you can put too much time into that than you can into a good story. And actually, the first Fable, as simple as parts of it were, it was a really good story with good elements to it. And I think again we might do another video closer to the time on how we would write the Fable game and what it would be if we were in control. And again, let us know in the comments if you're keen for a video like that. We're probably going to make it anyway, but it would be really good to know if you guys actually want it too. But if at this point, what I would be doing as a bit of a spoiler is I'd be doing the story of the fall of the guild, and how you basically, it's maybe, like I was saying before, maybe it is somehow orchestrated by Jack, because he knows that, you need to spread heroes out and not have the formal training if this corruption is coming, type thing, right? So maybe, because if the corruption gets these heroes that are already trained and more powerful, there'll be absolutely no stopping it. So maybe that's his motive. And maybe you're not Jack, but maybe you think that Jack is bad, and you might go up against this person that might be being sort of orchestrated by Jack. I think that would be a good story, because that already has other elements that you can bring in. And go back to Fable the original, some of the things and quests that come up, the twists and turns and the betrayals and the going to prison for 2 years, and all of those things has made it's such a great game, such an immersive game. And I think they could easily bring that stuff back, where I've played through Fable 2 and Fable 3 again recently, and a lot of the story felt contrived just to elongate rather than to actually add to the stories, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, going back to a sort of more simple concept is always going to be, I think, pretty good for Fable, as we talked about before, but on top of that, I think, exploring the downfall of the guild would sort of open up a really good idea for how to not necessarily end the game, but what your choices would affect. So, if you're an ultimate good hero, I guess you're going to be sort of fighting to keep the guild there. But maybe the evil choice, where you realize that maybe Jack is right, and that if all the heroes are being formally trained, it becomes a massive weakness if the Void does become the next enemy. Maybe it turns out that the evil choice is actually evil, but with a good motive at the end. It's not just raw evil, where you're just the incarnate of the devil, where you just get the horns and the flies and all that. You have a motive.
Don't forget about the footprints that burn into the ground.
Yeah.
That was my favourite part.
It's amazing, yeah. But I guess at least that way it means choosing evil might actually be, I guess, a little bit more beneficial to you. You can sort of justify it in your head. I guess maybe this is just for me. I'm sure there are some players out there who they can just easily make the evil choices. But for me, I feel like it was a lot easier to sort of do the good choices because it's sort of justified in the gameplay and the rewards you get for it. But in this case, it would be like, well, actually, the evil choice ultimately leads to the better outcome because, yeah, the Heroes Guild's going to be gone, but it means that you are technically still fighting the greater evil in the end. So you might be remembered as a ultimate villainous hero, but it got the job done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess another thing was, as I said, we touched on the weapons as well, but I think a good selection of weapons, maybe even some of the same weapons, rearing back up. If it's not, a million years away from that time, maybe you can still, find some of those weapons potentially. Maybe it could be wrong, but I think that would be kind of cool. Like, Marin Great Axe, Marin Great Hammer could still be knocking around somewhere, and do you know what I mean?
Like Thunder's armor or something.
Yeah, like that stuff would be kind of cool, I think. And even though I know that, again, if it's setting in that time, then there's a chance that Teresa might still be around, but maybe they can find some way that she's not in Albion during this time period somehow, that would be really good. Or just not involved and doesn't have screen time during this game. That's all I ask. Yeah, and I think other than that, I mean, yeah, some good fun stuff to do, and plenty of replay value.
Yeah, I think, like we said near the start of the video, there is definitely still a pretty reasonable chance that it's a alternate universe, and if it is, I actually kind of welcome it. I would be quite happy to hear that it's an alternate universe. That way, that some of the lore is still going to be related, and we might be able to still infer some backstory and lore in the new universe from the old games. But a fresh start, I think, is what Fable needs ultimately, and I think that is the direction it looks like they're going. And until we hear more, really, it's going to be a bit more difficult to speculate and sort of talk about what we actually want to see in depth. So this video is kind of just I guess, disorganized sort of blurting out of our thoughts of just the stuff that we're excited about and we're thinking about in terms of what could be in the next Fable game. So hopefully if you guys enjoyed this type of format, we'll be able to return to it in the future when we do have a bit more information. If they do announce that it's open world, we might be able to talk a bit more in depth about exactly what we want to see then in an open world game. Or if they announce what the villain is then from a trailer or something, then, if it is Jack of Blades, then we can really get into the nitty gritty and sort of look at what we want to see from that.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously letting us know as well what you think about a video where we actually just write our own story and what, we won't go through the whole thing because obviously it could be a big game, but we'll just give you the general summary of what the story we would write and add some of the aspects of what we would want to put in if we were the ones in charge of making the game. We, as I said, had made some versions of that, and I think we still got one up with Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs on there. It was just the Mass Effect ones I took down because I wanted to redo them because we did those when we were first starting out as a channel, and I want to bring them up to the quality or the hopeful quality that we are now at, which is a bit higher than what we were doing before. And other than that, guys, I think that's really what we wanted to say in this video. Let us know if you're keen for a video where we basically write the story for Fable 4 if we were given the job.
Yep, and with that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time in our next Fable video.
See you.